Hi, Aliza. How are you?
Good, Baruch Hashem. How are you?
Baruch Hashem. We just came in from up north. We're expecting a really big storm over here, but
That's
so
exciting.
far so good. So I'm really excited that you're here tonight. It's a really big honor, and I'm so appreciative. I know how busy you are, and it means a lot that you're actually here with us with our group, Jewish Women Talk About Intimacy. I just want to thank you for everything that you're doing, that you have done. I'm so honored to be part of the Core College chat. And it's so beautiful to see all people from, all of Klal Yisrael and how much everybody gains from each other. I think it's really an incredible thing. So thank you. Thank you for everything that you do.
Yeah, thank you. I'm thrilled to be able to do it. Really. Yeah, such a gift.
Okay,
to work with people like you and Chaya, and what a gift it is, really, that we can work together these days and really try to build Klal Yisrael. Yeah, it's a real privilege.
Amen. So I'm gonna introduce you. We're gonna start right away, and then you'll tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you actually started doing all of this, and a little bit about how everything developed. So the guest speaker is Aliza Bulow. We are so super excited to have her. Jewish Women Talk About Intimacy is a group that we believe that intimate relations is an incredible gift that Hashem has given Jewish couples to increase their love and to show the love that they have each other. And we believe that through education and practical tools, that they will be able to access the power inherent in this incredible gift that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us. And there's no question, like we said, that the strength of the two individuals is really the strength of the marriage itself. So we're constantly working on ourselves and then working on our marriage. And of course, this is the challenge of life, right? So Aliza Bulow is the founder of CORE, an international organization that trains, supports, and connects women who are strengthening the Jewish people, coretorah.org. After serving in the Nachal branch at the IDF in the early 80s, Aliza and her new husband visited refuseniks in Russia, hosted thousands of guests at their Shabbos table, raised a wonderful bunch of children, and now enjoy many grandchildren together. Aliza is an author, educator, and mentor to Rebbitzins, college teachers, and Jewish educators all around the world, and has taught Torah on 5 continents. Wow.
No, not yet Africa. It's on my list.
Okay.
So, okay.
So tell us a little bit of tell us what was it like? What did you do in the IDF? Or what was that?
Okay, well, my service in the IDF was actually a service in Klal Yisrael. That's the truth. I went to Israel when I was 16 in the middle of high school. And I actually left high school. I didn't intend to at first, but I left high school after 10th grade. I thought I'd just be in Israel for a year, but I stayed for 2 years. And then I got my GED and I started college. So I started Hebrew U, their bridge program, their Mechinat Madei Teva science preparatory program to start college. And then I turned 18 and applied for nursing school because I wanted to be a midwife. And one of the questions that they asked at Hadassah was, what did you do to serve the country? So I said, well, they said, what did you do in the army? I said, well, I didn't serve in the army. They said, why not? I said, because I'm religious. So they said, well, what did you do in Sherut Leumi, which is the religious girls substitute for the army? And I said, well, nothing. And they said, why not? I said, because I'm American. So but I was 18. So they said, why should we accept you into our program when there are many other applicants who have served the country? So with that, I realized at 18, I needed to serve the country. If I was planning on staying, I needed to do that. So I looked into the army and I looked into Sherut Leumi and I learned a lot more about Israeli society and understood then that there's this big gap in Israeli society between the religious and non-religious, partly because of non-service by the religious in the army. And I thought, if I want to make a contribution, the army for sure doesn't need me. However, maybe Israeli society does. Maybe I need to be a religious girl in the army. Maybe that will be my contribution. And maybe if I became religious in a performing arts high school in Portland, Oregon, I could maybe stay religious in the army in Israel. So I felt like that would be my contribution. So I joined the army, but I did join the Nachal branch, which is a branch that religious kids can go into, and especially the girls stay together with a religious group. So, so I joined that branch, and that branch, you're muted. I don't know if you're asking me a question, but Hannah, were you asking a question? You're muted, so I can't hear you.
We're fine. No,
Good, good,
continue.
good. Okay. Anyway, that branch of the army was about setting up settlements back in the day. This was 1982, back in the day when settlers were heroes and settlements were a good thing, a government project. But it really was about building the land. And the group that I was in was a very passionate group of religious girls who felt like we are building homes for Jews in this country, and it's a sacred responsibility. So even though it was fun, we did lots of fun stuff together from, we hung out as girls, but we pruned the avocados and we took care of the apple trees and we worked on the irrigation lines, and we cooked for all the kids in the army, and we did basic training, and we learned how to use 3 different weapons, and we learned chemical warfare defense, and then they plunked us on top of a hill to continue setting up a settlement. And we knew we were doing this sacred work. It was avodat kodesh, to really build the land and create a space for Jews to live. And I feel like that's been my passion, even before then, is building space for Jews to live. Whether it's a physical space or a communal space or a psychic space or a religious space, really creating space in which others flourish. And that's really that's the tagline for CORE. The internal tagline is, we create space in which others flourish. We support women who are strengthening Klal Yisrael. But our way of doing it is creating a space in which others flourish. So we don't have to fill that space, but we create that dynamic energy and then allow other people to grow in that space. So that was my army service, for sure. We were setting up a whole settlement for other people to move into. Once we had it set up, we moved out. But it was fun in those days. We had a pinat chai, a little zoo. We had a little sewing factory. We had our kitchen. We had our guard posts. And it was I don't know, it was kind of like summer camp, except in uniform with guns. But it was
I totally believe that every single thing that we do actually gives us tools to whatever the next stage is, wherever Hashem is going to turn us. We don't even think how does it connect, but somehow,
Totally.
it definitely does.
It definitely does. It definitely does. And I'm so glad that I did it. I'm so glad now that I did it then, because I didn't really think about how that service then would serve me and what I need to do my whole life. Because it gave me better Hebrew language skills. It gave me a connection to the land of Israel, and connection to the people of Israel, connection to politics in Israel, connection to even the Shemitah cycles in Israel, a different type of connection, but also a connection to Israelis today. Even though I'm American, even though I speak Hebrew with an American accent, but still, if I say "Ma shiratati b'nachal," they're like, "Ma." People are shocked, you served in the army, and it changes the dynamic of the conversation. And I'm so thankful that I have that ability to share that experience with a lot of Israelis. So it's a gift.
And how did you go in how did you get to the core? How did you start that?
Well, I always loved to build the Jewish people. That's the truth. So I started out in Kiruv right away. As soon as I knew anything Jewish, I started teaching something Jewish. And that was through my experience at Bravender's and seminary, where I was just learning, and then Hebrew U, where I did a little bit of just on the side teaching. And then I met my husband while I was in the army. He's American, but I met him in Israel. Went back to the States, went to college in the States, taught through Hillel and Jewish Student Union, and grew into adulthood, got married, started teaching. So I was in Kiruv for a long time. And then I got a job with Ner LaElef, which is it was, I think it's almost over, but it was an institute in Israel that trained young rabbinic couples concurrent with and post smicha to go out and do kiruv or chinuch, Jewish education, in different ways all around the world. And I was hired at that time to follow up with the women in North America. So that's really how I became a Rebbitzin's Rebbitzin, was I was able to travel for 11 years. I was salaried and had a travel budget to travel to small communities and work with Rebbitzins all across North America. So Canada, the United States, Mexico, even Australia. So I had many opportunities to grow and share. And then through those Rebbitzins, to see through their eyes into their marriages, their siblings, their parenting, their parents, like into their communities or their communities of origin, and how much support they needed, but their siblings needed and their neighbors needed. And that's how CORE was founded, that I really realized we need to strengthen the core of the Jewish people. And that's the observant women. So I'm working on strengthening observant women because I feel like with all that Kiruv energy, after 50 years of a well-oiled, well-funded Kiruv machine on this planet, if we're still doing Kiruv, it's kind of maybe because the Orthodox people are not doing their thing the right way. Because I really feel like it should be, we're all shining brightly enough that people want to join us. Like they should just look at us and say, wow, what's up with you guys? You guys are amazing. Your marriages, your businesses, your communities, your schools. I want a piece of that. How could I have that? So I want to help us live in a way that we start to shine like that. So I'm working on strengthening women so that our homes and our marriages and our families and our communities shine like that. So so our own won't leave and so others will join. That's right.
I love what you're saying. And it's like the Rebbe always says about lamplighters, that we should be, like you said, so strong and so bright that we can't help it, but you just have to share with other people and they can, and just light their neshama. And that's what I always tell everyone. What people are going to get the most out of it is not the particular details, but your enthusiasm, your love, your excitement. And I just love what you said. So when you started doing all this, was your husband involved with you? How did that work?
So yes, he was. I met my husband. I thought we met just like this, right on the same level. But it turns out we met just like this. I was still heading up a little and he was like just cresting. So my husband was raised in a traditional family and he became Shomer Shabbos on campus through Chabad, actually in Madison, Wisconsin. He went to college on the same campus where I was born. So I didn't go to school there, but my parents were going to school there. So Hashem has the way he arranges things. So anyway, so I met him when we were both, I thought, around the same religious level, but we were walking in slightly different directions, not terribly, but like just both settling into where we needed to be. I don't think I've ever settled actually, but whatever. The more I learn, the more I love it, and the more I continue to grow. And for some people that can be annoying. Let me just tell you, some people don't like that ever growing, ever exploring, never dying excitement. That for Brenta relationship could be for some people a little overpowering.
Well, I think that's a little bit, a woman's nature also. Like I remember listening to a shiur and the gentleman, he says, when you give shiurim to men and women, the same exact shiur, there's a totally different reaction. He says, afterwards, the women will say, oh my goodness, it's so beautiful. How are we going to implement it? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? And the men say like, that was beautiful. And they get up and daven mincha,
Right. Right.
I think it's like, we hear something and it's like, okay, so like we need to implement it. It has to be practical. What do we want to hear it and just, not do anything about it? So tell me a little bit about, when did you feel it? Did he always encourage you to do what you did? And tell me a little bit about that journey.
With me. I mean, when we got engaged, we were very much partners, even before we got engaged. That was before HIPAA laws. We were married for 36 years. We got engaged, so 37 years ago, before HIPAA laws. So we used to go to Sloan Kettering Hospital on Shabbos morning, and we would get lists of all the Jewish patients and all their ailments. They would just list on the floors, like, these are the brain cancer patients, these are the pediatric patients, these are the breast cancer patients, these are the whatever. And we would get lists of patients on floors and we would divide them up. We went with a small group of Mevakre Cholim to visit all the sick people at Sloan Kettering. And we divide up the list and we go floor to floor and visit them. So we started right away doing that kind of thing together, even before we were married. And we were very clear. It was also during the time of the hard work towards getting the Jews released from the Soviet Union. And we were very active in that too. I was active in college campus politics and going to Washington. I was in New York City. So we'd take the bus down to Washington, DC and lobby the congressman. And I had all the statistics memorized at that time. And he was still in law school he was in law school until we got married. I got married right after he graduated. So he was busy with his thing, but I was busy leading student groups down to Washington, DC, and doing those kinds of things. And he was in full support of all of that, full support, no question about it. And then when we got married, we just, our Shabbos table was a table full of guests pretty much right away. In fact, the first Pesach only, we went to his parents. But our second Pesach together, we were in a building with all Jews. The whole building was Jewish. We actually moved into his grandparents' apartment. His grandparents had passed away. So we were in our 20s and everybody else in the building was Jewish and in their 80s. So we were on a floor of 14 apartments of all 80-year-old Jews. And they were all my girlfriends because there's nobody in Long Beach, Long Island at that time that was my age. No one. Everybody was, there were some families, but they were all like 15 years older at least, but there was nobody in their 20s. So all these 80-year-old ladies were my girlfriends. So the second Pesach, we invited them all for a Seder. And I thought half would come for one Seder, half would come for another Seder. They all wanted the first Seder and one wanted both. So I said, okay, everybody come for the first Seder and you'll come for the second one too. And our whole table was full of everybody. Now looking back on it, now that I'm 57, at that time hosting everybody, it was an amazing thing to host everybody, and everybody in the whole floor came. And I did other things. I brought my lulav and etrog around to them. I gave them mishloach manot. Like I made a Jewish community out of that floor. They were all American born, actually, no accent. One had an accent from Greece, a Jew from Greece. Everybody else was American born, but they didn't have a background. They remembered, like with the lulav and etrog. Oh, I remember this from my childhood, right? You pay a quarter and you get to shake it. I'm like, oh no, you don't have to pay a quarter. You can just shake it. Anyway, they all came for the Seder. And now looking back, I think, why didn't they have a place to go for a Seder? It was the first night of Pesach. Everybody has a Seder. How did a whole floor of 80-year-old Jews have the capacity to come to our house, little schnooks, making a Seder? You know, like, where were their children? Where were their, I couldn't, like now looking back with all this experience, I just can't believe they all didn't have another place to go, that they all came to us for that Seder. So, and one of them told me, and then here's where my husband pulled back a little bit. Well, it was a little overwhelming having all these old Jews at our table. He was like, okay, you made this happen. You run the Seder. I'm like, no, you run the Seder. He's like, no, you run the Seder. Okay, fine. So we said, everybody go around the table and read in the language of your choice. So one of the couples afterwards came over to me. One of the women said, you know, my husband, she said, she said, he read in Hebrew. Her husband read in Hebrew. She said, I didn't even know, we're married 50 years. I didn't even know my husband could read Hebrew. We almost didn't come. We couldn't find a yarmulke, and he was too embarrassed to come to your house without a yarmulke. And so he wasn't going to go. But I told him, you have to go. Aliza made the Seder and she's counting on you and you have to go. So we kept looking, we found a yarmulke, we came, and then he read his part in Hebrew. He said, I didn't even know he could read Hebrew. So it was an amazing experience to have all these old Jews without a lot of connections sitting around the table and making a Seder together with them. It was a very special experience. Anyway, we did that together for years, that kind of thing, whether it was, you know, inviting guests from all walks of life and the kind of studying that we did together at first to be a singer, trying to figure out how, like, missionary countering and whatever it was, we did learn together. He was busy in his law firm and I was busy raising children, and I still learned and I still taught, and the more I grew, the more I loved it. But I taught only one-on-one. And then finally somebody asked me to start giving a shiur, and I was like, no way. I'm not like a Torah teacher. Like, I wish I was, but I don't know enough. But she said, but you have to, like, you explain things so easily. And really, I said, no way. I said, like, 15 minutes away is Tehila Yeager and Debbie Greenblatt and Esther Wien. Like, I could never teach Torah in their shadow. Like, it's 15 minutes to Far Rockaway. Go get a real teacher. And they said, actually, it's 15 minutes away and we're young mothers. We need a teacher right here in Long Beach. Please, oh, please. So whatever, I read something that night that helped change my mind. And that's how I started teaching slowly in my living room, other people's living rooms, just like piece by piece. I started with Shmer Lashon and then the Parsha and then Derech Hashem. And then I just grew as a teacher and my students grew. And yeah. So wait, you're muted. I can't hear you.
You know, so many times it's like we see people doing a lot of things and we just imagine how their life was like, you know, their spouse is always on the same page, and you know, they're encouraging them in that way because they share that passion, and like you said, in that level, and their values. And so many times we don't realize, like, no, that sometimes it's not necessarily like that. And what I find phenomenal about you, and encouraging, just even, you know, personally, is that so many times people feel like if we were just on the same page, I could be this and this and this, or I would do this and this and this, or I'd be able to live out my dreams, you know? And so many times it's like, no, it doesn't necessarily mean that way. We don't have to be on that same page to live out our dreams, or to respect the person,
Right.
even if there are differences. And I think that you really are an incredible example. And when I was hearing your story about, you know, all that you went through, you know, with having a child who had mental illness, losing a child, and your husband not being, sort of say, on the same derech of, you know, Yiddishkeit, and yet you flourished and you grew and you became stronger in Yiddishkeit. And yet, when you talk about your husband, it's with so much respect, and you built this respectful, incredible relationship. I think like that's an incredible lesson for all of us. You know, when we were speaking about how to build strong marriages, you know, with derech differences, I said, you know what, I don't even want to put derech differences, because it doesn't only apply to someone who has derech differences. I think that that's a very big thing. You know, because so many people in my shul actually, like I would meet a husband or a wife, and they sometimes feel regretful that they didn't follow their passion for Yiddishkeit, and they felt that they couldn't because they married someone, you know, who was as less passionate about Yiddishkeit, you know. And you sometimes hear it like I wish I would have, or I miss it, or I feel bad, you know, that I don't have it in my life, or that my children don't have it in my life. And I feel that you really are an example of that. You're passionate about something, that's okay. Follow your dreams. You know, we can be respectful and supportive of each other, even if it might not be, you know, even if we don't feel that way personally.
It's true. It's true. And we worked hard on it. I'll tell you, I had a moment actually, because I definitely went through years of frustration. There's no question about it that I wished, you know, especially learning from Tehila Yeager and going to her classes regularly, and Debbie Greenblatt and her classes regularly. And I was close with Tehila Yeager. I drove her. I tried to be Mishamesh a little bit. I wanted to be a Shamish. Like I wanted that Shumash Tamat Chacham, however I could get that. So I did like try to drive Tehila Yeager to classes and just to learn from her and be in her house and see her ways. And I was so jealous, which I knew as a kinnis sofrim, and I was allowed to have that jealousy. I discussed it with her, but like I wanted a father like that, and a husband like that, and sons like that, and a brother like that. Like, no fair, Hashem. You put me in a family without any of that. Just, I was so frustrated.
Sorry,
Nevertheless,
Aliza, sorry to interrupt. I just feel some of us are feeling we don't know the story, the background. I think, can you
fill in a
back
drop
up a
more.
little and give us a little bit more of the story?
So I'll fill in one drop more, which is not the story for tonight, but just, I don't know if you're asking for this piece, but that I did convert to Judaism when I was 16. So I don't know if that's what you're asking for.
No, I meant you're talking about differences, but
I'll tell you more of them. Yes.
Okay.
I'll tell you more of them. Yeah. Anyway, so I had that tremendous jealousy. I mean, I became observant at 14 and I converted at 16, and I went to Israel at 16 and a half. So I grew up in Israel, but I didn't have that father, that brother, that husband, that, you know, son. And it was frustrating for me. And when I met my husband, he was a 3 times a day davener, but even by the time we got married, he wasn't. And he still kept kosher on Shabbos, and we had a Shabbostic home, and the home was kosher. There was, I mean, if he would have tuna fish out, like it started to go like that, like little bits and pieces. And we had a don't ask, don't tell policy, which he taught me to have around food. Like one time he told me he took somebody out for a business lunch, and I said, "Oh, where'd you go?" And he said, "Don't ask questions you don't want to know the answers to." And I was like, great idea. Then I won't. Right. So we had for a while a don't ask, don't tell policy. Anyway, and he didn't hold by some of the things I held by, like, for instance, hair covering. He felt like that's just stupid. Why do you cover your hair? It's the dumbest thing. It's left over from the ancient days. Like, well, where does that even come from? And I tried to explain to him, like, as somebody who was becoming more and more learned, the whole where it comes from, the pasuk and the Torah, into the oral law, into the Shulchan Aruch, into the, like, how we manifest it today, like the whole transmission of this. He just thought it's stupid. So one time we were in Denver, Colorado, after we moved here from Long Beach. And one of the fun things to do in Colorado is the Alpine slide. I don't know if they have it anymore, but you take a chairlift up to the top of the mountain in the summertime, and there's a slide, a fast slide, like a toboggan, like a dry toboggan kind of, that you slide down on. And the kids were into it, and we thought, we'll do it too. We were in our 30s. So up the chairlift we go, and I'm wearing a hat. And I realized, as I'm looking down, I realized I can't do that. My hat will fly off. Like, I can't hold on to this thing that's going fast, and my hat, like, I just can't do that. So I said to my husband, like, I can't. I said, you could go, but I'm not going. He said, I'm not going if you're not going. So I was fine. So we take the chairlift back down. Okay. So now we're the only ones on the chairlift coming down. Everybody else is going up to go down the slide. And I'm feeling a little sorry for myself. He's like, it's okay if your hat comes off. I'm like, no, it's not okay if my hat comes off. I cover my hair. So I'm coming down the slide, looking out over beautiful Colorado, sitting next to, right now, feeling a little sorry for myself, feeling like I'm sitting next to a man who does not care if I cover my hair. And I've been careful in that mitzvah since the day we got married, actually looked forward to it. That's the truth. Here's a little parenthetical thing. As a convert, I very much looked forward to it because I wanted to look Jewish. And guys look Jewish by putting on a yarmulke. And I couldn't wait until, like, I just for sure looked Jewish. Covering your hair, because I didn't wear a sheitel at first. I wore a scarf with the, like, 1980s twirly across the top kind of thing. And I was like, that's a clear sign. Nobody could wonder. And I couldn't wait to cover my hair for that. But anyway, it's a mitzvah I always loved. And I was frustrated. And all of a sudden, I realized in that moment, coming down next to this man who I loved, who didn't care about that mitzvah when I did, that, and I didn't have that father, and I didn't have that husband, and I didn't have that brother. And I realized somebody has to be the example for women who don't have that, whether they're single or divorced or never married or whatever, widowed or alone or feel alone, or they're alone in their marriage. Like, somebody has to be the example for the woman who keeps halacha because she keeps halacha, not because of the family she was born into, and not because of the men she's related to, but because of the person that she is. And I realized that's my job, is to be me and not somebody else. So it was a real moment for me, and a moment of acceptance too in our marriage, to realize, like, I have a job. Hashem put me here in this place with this man at this time. And he's a wonderful man who loves me and supports me, and I love and support him. And it was so frustrating for so long that he wasn't from it, until and I'm not saying it was perfect the whole time, but I that was a big shift for me to realize, like, it's supposed to be this way. Hashem could have matched me with anybody. I was in Israel, for crying out loud. Like, he brought my chassan from the States over to Israel for me to meet him. I could have met any frum guy in Israel. And that's not who Hashem introduced me to. He introduced me to this man at this time, and he's the right one for me. So he's the one I'm supposed to build that bait Naaman with. Okay, so now with that being said, yeah.
Wow, I think that's actually so incredible. How you change that, change your view, and you were able to accept it and have that perspective is like, it's wow. All I was thinking is like, wow, that's incredible, And I remember, actually, I had a student of mine who always, when she used to go to the States, she used to get pulled over because she looked Muslim, and she got pulled over by customs every single time, many times missing her flight because they would question her. And she was so frustrated, and she used to get so worried and so scared. And she was always very anxious beforehand. And she was telling me this story, and I said to her, that must mean, and she used to tell them about what she does, and they used to ask her questions, and she used to teach in the seminary, and she used to tell them about the 7 mitzvahs of Noach and all the kinds of different things that she was doing. And I said to her, do you realize you are the shlucha for the custom officers? And she says, as soon as she had that mission, it was like she would go to the airport an hour to 2 hours early. She knew she was going to be pulled over. She knew that she was gonna, and she actually looked forward to this. And when she wasn't one time, she said, I'm actually disappointed, you know?
That's
But
great.
when you said it's like so powerful when we're able to feel like, I think it's wow, like this is my mission. I need to be that example.
Yeah.
And you are that example. You really are that example.
Right. So I try, and Hashem has given me continued opportunities to learn and grow in that space. So Chaya, just to continue that story. So we have 6 children, and our youngest one was born with I don't know if he was born with it or if he got it later, but from age 5, we definitely saw some pretty serious mental illness. And he was suicidal from a very, very young age. I mean, from really a young age. We lived in Long Beach at the time, and he would tell me, like, I see the ocean. I just want to walk into the ocean and keep on going. Never come. I want to walk in traffic and die. And he would tell me, like, I didn't ask to come here and I don't want to stay. And it was lots of stuff for all that time, not going into all that story, but it was a real trial raising a mentally ill child. And he finally did die of his illness. So when he was 19, just about 8.5 years ago. So, and that did not take away my husband's imuna. My husband was still there, like during the Shiva. And my husband said, if Hashem would have asked us when we had 5 children and we wanted a 6th, if he would have said to us, I'll give you a 6th, but he's going to be mentally ill and he'll take his life when he's 19. Do you still want him? So we would have said no. But he said, now that we had him, I said, I would not have traded that, would not have traded it. So, okay, so that was Donnie. But then a couple of years later, and that was hard. It was definitely hard. We went through, there were other bumps there, and I won't tell you all the bumps, but there were some bumps in Shul and Kaddish, and there were hard things. We lost a grandchild too in that year. Actually, my husband lost 3 generations in 1 year. Donnie died in May, and then his father died on Sukkot, and then we had a granddaughter that died, a 2-week-old granddaughter that died a few months later. So a twin who did not make it. So in 1 year, 3 generations. And then a couple of years later, another daughter had a son who seemed fine, but needed some surgery and a little extra TLC. And then he started shuddering, and his baby Bjorn, like doing little things like that. And my daughter was concerned about it. And everybody said, that's fine, babies shudder. But it turns out they don't. Those are seizures. And he had a seizure disorder, and it took him a year, but he suffered and died in a year. Suffered and died. He did not have a good life. Like Donnie had good parts in his life. So it wasn't an all bad life. He had a lot of good parts, but this baby had a hard life and then died. And I think that did it for my husband. It was like, after that, he was like, no, I just can't believe, I can't believe in Hashem that brings a baby into the world just to torture him and kill him. And it's one thing for us to lose a child, but I felt like this also standing behind my daughter at the funeral of this tiny little baby in a tiny little coffin going into the ground. Like, really, Hashem? Like, it's one thing to take our kid, but you take her kid too? Like, what are you thinking, actually? So that was a very hard time. And I have that strong emunah. And for me, it was fascinating to see, like, this baby was partially named after Donnie and partially named after my husband's father. So our son is Daniel Moshe, and his father is Nehemiah Wolf. This baby was Moshe Nehemiah. So I'm thinking, here's this baby named after these 2 special men, and now he's dead too. Like, really? And then I thought, well, only because my daughter brought this up, she wondered if maybe if her baby really was Donnie's reincarnation. Because she felt like maybe all Donnie needs is to die a natural death. And maybe this baby was brought into the world to carry that neshama to die a natural death. And she felt like maybe she could do that for her brother, like just bring this neshama to a natural death. And after he died, I realized both boys died of brain disorders, right? Because those seizures it's electrical disorders in your brain, and mental illness is a brain disorder. Both boys died of brain disorders, just one has judgment around it and one doesn't. For me, I could think that way, but for my husband, he was like, what kind of God brings a baby into the world to torture him and kill him? If there's a God like that, I don't want to be in a relationship with him. I'd rather believe there's not a God that's that mean than believe that God is that mean. And so he decided he's done. So that was hard. That was a hard break. No question about it. That was a few years ago. And And that's when he decided to not be Shomer Shabbos anymore. And I mean, the house is still kosher. The house is still Shabbostic. But I knock before I go into our bedroom. And at first, so here's a piece like what every woman should know about differences. So for a while there, we continued the don't ask, don't tell policy about Shabbos. Like he would, not that he was hiding it, but he would put his phone away right away when I came into our bedroom, or I would knock first to let him put it away. And I finally realized that, or we realized together that that was taking away from our intimacy. And by intimacy, I don't mean here the euphemism for sexuality. I mean actual intimacy of a close relationship. Because if we're hiding things from each other, then we can't be intimate. And really, we have to move into a space of deeper respect and acceptance of each other. And that means me accepting him and his path, and him accepting me on mine. And us making that, like remaking the agreement that we're in this together and we will continue to turn towards each other, which we did make that. I mean, when we got married, we made a promise to each other that we won't get divorced and we won't commit suicide because we weren't abandoning each other. We just, so that the other person could relax. Like we are here for the long haul and we're not leaving. So my parents got divorced. His parents were still married. But my parents got divorced after 17 years. And I just felt like I'm not doing that. I am not repeating it. I'm getting married and it's going to work, period. End of discussion. It is going to work. So I held my breath for 17 years until I crossed the line that my parents made it for. And then we crossed it again, double, after 34 and a half years. And we're still going. It's 36 years of marriage. But we made that pact in the beginning. Then when Donnie died, there's real concern too, because a lot of times a death of a child breaks up a marriage. And my husband was very upset about that. He's just like, I said, I can't bear losing our son and losing you. And I said, look, don't worry. Like, we're going to choose right now to turn towards each other and not away from each other. Give each other space in our grief. Everybody gets to mourn in their own way, no judgment about their mourning, and we'll be next to each other and we will walk this together. Even though we have to walk it alone. There's definitely a desert of mourning where you walk alone in the desert, but we felt we could hold hands across in each other's deserts. It's private space, but we could hold hands across the divide. So we did that. And then we had to do it again with this. We just had to say, look, we are not leaving this. Like we will figure out how to respect each other and be in a relationship where each one is valued, which doesn't mean that it's perfect every day. For sure, there are little bits and pieces that are frustrating here and there, but in general, it's a very nice place to be where we really support each other. And there are times I did learn a tool from Tehillah Yeager that I use still, even with heightened levels of respect. But nevertheless, this pasuk of Eshet Chayil, Gamlahu Tov V'lo Ra, has been a tool that I've used my whole life, and that is she returns to him his good and not his bad. And every marriage comes with bad, right? Every marriage has hard parts, and you get to choose what you return or what you repay. Gamlahu tov v'lo ra. And so I would keep that pasuk in my mouth if I wanted to say something not nice to my husband because he just said something not nice to me, right? So, and I could just say, like, what do I want to return? The good or the bad? I'm going to return the good and not the bad, right? V'lo ra. So there are times when I keep my mouth shut when I'd rather like say something, but I don't. And that helps, just bring it down a notch and diffuse it so we could move back into a space of respect. And sometimes we need a little like room there, half an hour, whatever. Phones are great for that. You do a little scrolling and you're back, on the path, whatever it is. Like you can have a little avoidance. And then back together, but to just really make a conscious effort to respect each other and turn towards each other. So that we did that with Shabbos too, where like he really, now I know he does that. He doesn't, if I come in the room, he still puts his phone away, but he doesn't try to hide it. It's like, I know you're scrolling on Shabbos. That's what you do, right? I'm outside. I read, I do something else. You come for the meals. You don't go to shul. I go to shul by myself. During Corona, I don't. We'll see what happens. I don't know. I've disconnected from shul a little bit. But it's still Shabbos in the house. When you have a Shabbos house, like it's interesting in less from families, shul is such an important thing, even for women, because that's like Shabbos, you go to shul. But from houses, like women don't have to go to shul because the whole house is Shabbos. Like that's your Shabbos space. So our whole house is Shabbos. except for that little space around him where it's not when he's got his phone, but basically our whole house is Shabbos stick. And he's very respectful of it. So respectful enough that he actually told me, he said, so I said, if you could ask a Shaila, like, I don't know if you're Yotzei by my Kiddush. Like, I know you care, but like, I don't know who I'm saying a bracha to. Like, I say Kiddush, but like, I don't really believe in God. And when I say these words, like, who am I saying them to? Like, I know you care if you're Yotzei or not. Like, I think you should ask a Shaila if you are. So I thought to myself, that's a very risky Shaila. Because if I ask that Shaila and I'm told you're not Yotzei, then what? Then I have to make Kiddush? Oh no, I'm not letting him off the hook for being in charge of the Shabbos table. Like, I cook Shabbos, but he still is the man who stands there and makes Kiddush. So I use my own Das Torah on this, and I am not saying I checked this out. I did not. But I basically understand we have a concept that Ishto kegufo. His wife is like his very own body. So if that's the truth, then I thought to myself, if he says the words and I provide the kavana, we can make one bracha that way. So when he says the words, I concentrate very hard. Usually I close my eyes now to really think about the words so that I make sure those words have kavana in them. And that's how we do Kiddush. So yeah, so it's a partnership. And he respects me in it and I respect him in it. I usually bench by myself. That's okay too. I make Havdalah by myself. That's okay too. Sometimes I feel a drop sorry for myself. That's the truth. And usually I'm just like, look, this is what I chose. I know how to do this. And we have a great, like, he totally supports me in everything that I'm doing. I mean, like, we have this lovely home. I have my lovely core office. I'm running a beautiful organization and I could never do it without his love and support. So he totally supports me. And I'm so thankful for that. And I try to support him too. And he's thankful for that too. We're having it's a nice time. These are definitely golden years. No question about it.
I think some
Wow.
people might have some questions. One of my questions, it just run to the head of the line here is, I think a lot of people might be wondering, especially these days, we talk a lot about being real and being authentic. And when you were talking about holding back what you would say, I understand it as because you have the big picture in mind. You have the foundation
100%.
of the marriage, the relationship. But where do you draw that strength from? I think is another question, is how do you stay authentic and where do you draw that strength from? Obviously a deep emunah, but guidance, books, like where are you drawing this
You're asking
from?
two questions. You're asking two different questions because one is, how do you have the strength to keep your mouth shut when you're frustrated with somebody, right? That's a hard thing. And that requires a focus on the bigger picture. Like, what's really important to me, answering back right now or having a beautiful relationship that I mostly enjoy being in? I could make a big tear in this relationship right now if I answer back. And it'll take more than a half an hour or an hour to bring it back together, right? It could take a couple days. It could be yucky. People have yucky times. And we just have like some like off color notes in this basic symphony. So there are off color notes, but if I could make sure that I like keep my mouth shut at those times, they're just notes and the symphony still plays and it's beautiful. So in general.
But it also seems that your husband plays by the same rules because you made that commitment to the marriage.
Yeah, we did.
It's both of you.
It is.
Doing
It
that.
for sure is. It for sure is. And we both, because we do have that bigger picture of what we want. And so we're aiming towards that. We want a loving, supportive marriage that we both feel held and treasured in. And so we do that. There are times, and that's authentic. Like people might say, why it's not authentic to say if you're mad about something and you don't say, yes, it's authentic. It's authentically desiring a deep relationship where you feel held, trusted, loved, and accepted. And there are times when you have to do something to invest in that. And sometimes that's investing in quiet to create what you basically want. So that's very authentic. It just is hard to do sometimes, but absolutely worthwhile. So let me tell you this. So like where the Emunah piece, because one I did, like I spoke with somebody once, a reporter who was reporting without my name. She asked me, I said something about building a bayit ne'eman. She said, how can you build a bayit ne'eman with your husband if he's not from? I said, oh, that's an interesting question, right? So what does Naaman mean, actually? Is it a house of emunah? Is it a house of steadiness? Right? When we talk about Moshe Rabbeinu's arms in this past week Parsha, staying up, and how he needed that support from a friend on each side to keep his arms up. And then the pasuk says, "V'yadav emunah," his hands were emunah, his arms were emunah. Right? What does emunah mean? You believe in Hashem, or you're steady or steadfast. Right? Our relationship is steadfast, and our home is rooted and steadfast. And we're for sure building that. Do we have all the emunah on both sides of emunah and Hashem that's weaving that together? No, we don't. We have one strong emunah in Hashem, and one, I would like to say, paused emunah in Hashem. I don't actually think, and I want to speak about this for a second too, I don't actually think he doesn't believe anymore. I think he's pretty mad. And so there's a pause, might be a long pause. But let's talk about that for a second, because I did like write down like hope and pain and acceptance and hope. Like, if you're still hoping, let's just say somebody's sick, right? And you're hoping for them to get better, then every day that they're not better, you're in pain, because the hope and pain actually go together. And the pain can be released once you get to acceptance, right? Once you say, okay, this is how it is, you can release some of the pain and live with what you have. So like, take that away from terminal illness and move it in just as a muscle and move it into here. Like, a lot of people are scared to move into acceptance with loving their, whoever it is, child, parent, spouse, friend, neighbor, how they are, because they feel like if they accept that, it's condoning it. And it's not. There's a difference between acceptance and condoning. Like, I don't think it's a good idea to walk in this world without trusting in Hashem at every turn. Nevertheless, for those people who choose to live that way, if I can accept that's who they are, then I can live with that, which takes away a piece of hope, actually, once you accept it. Because then you're not hoping for change all the time. Acceptance and hope don't always go together. So how does that work? You know, in a way, I was thinking about, like, how does that work with Mashiach? Like, we accept that he's not here today. Is that just because we don't hope enough? Like, you know, we don't go to sleep every night extremely disappointed that Mashiach didn't come. It would be nice if we did, but we don't. Right? So is it an acceptance? Like, there is sort of an acceptance, like it's probably not going to be today, but we hope it'll be today. But like, how does that work? I'm not quite sure, and we'll leave that aside. But still, there is something about hope and acceptance and the tension between them. So I think there still can be a general hope for a change in the future, while there's still the actual acceptance of the present the way it is. And when you come to that acceptance, you do come to a greater authenticity. That's where you get the authenticity, is in that deep acceptance of who you are at this time. You have to have that for real, authentic relationship. You have to be in a relationship with the person that he is, not the person that you wish he was. Right? So I don't know if you remember from back in the ancient days, but there was a Crosby, Stills and Nash song about love the one you're with. If you can't be with the one you love the one you're with. Right? So what does that mean? I looked up the lyrics. I wasn't sure I wanted to quote it, but the point is, if you can't, like, if you have this fantasy person and you can't be with that person, whether it's another person or it's the person you're with, but it's the fantasy of who he was, who you thought you married, and he's not, right? He is the guy he is the guy he is, and he's not the guy you thought, right? And there's a distance between the man he is and the man you wish for. And then there's all that stress of always being disappointed, because you're never married to that guy you wish for if you're not in the marriage with the guy that you are married to. So you live in disappointment every single day that you have that. So if you can't be with the one you love the one you're with, right? But that means understanding who is that man and loving him how he is. So that's a choice I make every day, is to love the man I'm with. He's an amazing man. And would I love it if maybe I would, I want him to be that one. I don't want a different husband, but like that he would be more religious, or I don't even know. Like, yes, I would love that, but I wouldn't be me if he was. And I actually like how I am, like I'm doing a lot of great stuff in this world, and I wouldn't be doing the same stuff if I had a husband who was much more of a leader and much more of a learner and much more of a spiritual giver in that way. I wouldn't be who I am. So, I'm trusting Hashem and how he set up the world. And he set up the world that I should have this husband at this time, in this era, in this place. And I'm thankful for that. Any questions you want, go for it.
Aliza, I'll ask a question.
Okay.
I'm sitting here just like inhaling it all and like, oh my God, I hope this is gonna be recorded. It's something we should listen to every day. I just published an episode on belonging, and it was about acceptance, and we were talking about belonging with children and acceptance. And acceptance doesn't mean that it's okay for us. It means that we're accepting the way it is. And that's how we can give belonging to our children when they're different than us. And it was I felt like Hashem was
Mhm.
saying, Matana, what you published was good because Aliza's saying it. So it's
Right,
for sure.
That's what it is. I was thinking about this circuitous route that we took from Mitzrayim to Eretz Yisrael in this past week's parsha. What's up with that? Moshe wouldn't ask directions. That's the classic joke. Or did Hashem actually decide that we needed to go 40 years in circles to different places? Why? Because the goal isn't arrival. The goal is transformation, right? And we have this circuitous route that Hashem brings us in, from the parents that he gives us, to the place that we're born, to the experiences that we have, to the peers that we have, to the schools that we have. Like, it's so circuitous. Hashem could have made it work just right. The schools could have been great, and the peers could have been perfect, and the experiences could have lined up, and the parents could have been paying attention the whole time, and right, and everything could have gone just great. But it doesn't. We go on this long circuitous route, including the spouse we marry, and the spouse they turn into, and the children we have, and the children they turn into, and the parents we have, and the parents they turn into. And it's all about the us we are and the us we turn into through all of that. So we need that whole long circuitous route.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And the question that I wanted to ask was, I'm sure you get this a lot. What do you think about chinuch when it's very two different ways? And how does it come into, like, how does your emotion, forget the practicality, your emotion? I know I'm more lenient than my husband, and he's like, but chinuch and chinuch and chinuch. And I'm like, but if they see authenticity and kindness, that's the greatest chinuch it can really give a child. But when it's so different, how do we deal with chinuch?
Right. So I would say that's where the same book comes in. If you can get into the same book, but you're on different pages. So what's the same book? Like, one of my chinuch things is saying, we're not raising children, we're raising adults who are going through a phase of childhood. So if we have our eyes on the prize, what do we want? We want healthy, happy, independent Jewish adults. That's what we're raising. And the phase of childhood that they're going through has to be guided and shaped, so they hopefully will achieve that healthy, happy, independent Jewish adulthood. So then we might have different ways of achieving that. He's a little stricter, you're a little softer. He believes in, I don't know, going to school every day. You believe in picking your kids up and taking them on dates, so they have that special one-on-one time, which they can't get with 6 kids in the house. They have to miss school for that. He believes in more math and you believe in more literature, or whatever it is, right? So, but in the end, if you're in the same book, you may have different strategies that you have to create some space for, but the goal is a happy, healthy, independent Jewish adult. And you're both working towards that. And sometimes you just have to reestablish that goal with each other. Like, what are we doing? We both have different means. And most likely, since Hashem gave these children each 2 parents, they probably need both different derechs in order to achieve that happy, healthy Jewish adulthood. And they're going to figure it out. You know what? When they're 15, when they're 18, when they're 20, they're going to reevaluate everything you did and said. And they'll do it again when they're 30 and again when they're 40, just like you are right now, as you look at your parents and say, oh, now I understand that. Or, oh, why didn't they do that? Whatever it is. You reevaluate and you reprocess and you re-forgive or hold them accountable for something. They will too. And it's part of shaping their adulthood as they continue to go. And that's the process. And it's okay. It's okay. So part of it's just like, exhale. Hashem's got this. All we have to do is our best in the moment. That's all we have to do. Hashem's the one in charge of the results. We're not. We just have to do our best in the moment.
Right. And not fearing the idea of the other not being the right role model for our children.
Right. All you can be is you. You try to be the best role model, the best you possibly can, according to understanding that you have, which you will change your mind about in 5 years and 10 years. You know,
Right.
whatever it is, the food that you gave them, you can't believe you're looking back thinking, really? That's what I thought was nutrition, or that's what I thought was okay. That's what I bribed them. That's what I used to bribe. Wow. I can't believe I was, or whatever it is.
Right.
And that's what they needed at that time. It's okay. They all grow up if they eat Bamba or if they eat health food, if they brush their teeth, if they don't, if you pay an extra $10,000 for cavities, or if you didn't, they still hopefully make it to adulthood. And they have their own things they have to deal with because of that. You can't prevent it. They're all going to need therapy in the end. So it's okay.
True. Very true. Thank you, Aliza. Thank you.
Sure. Nahama, did you
Can
have
I
a
ask a
thought?
question?
I think the key is, like you
Sorry.
said, is that you're respecting the other person, that even though we may not like, you know, yes, Hati is more strict about this and I respect him about that, you know, I'm not there, but you could, even if you're not that person, you can respect another person being a certain way.
Right, right. Which doesn't mean when their kids are littler and it really matters, like policy can only be this way or that way, then you have to figure it out between the two of you. But the respect makes the difference. It does. And there's frustrating times, and that's okay. That's where the commitment comes in. Like, you could get over a frustrating time. It'll end. So you know, might take a few months.
Nechama,
ask
did
a
you have a
question?
question? Nechama? No? You know,
Can I ask a
Aliza,
question?
oh, yes, go ahead.
Sorry. Okay, so I'm sorry that my video is off just because it's broken, not because I'm trying to hide. Thank you so much, Aliza. Could you hear me?
Yes, I can. Mhm.
Okay, thank you. I'm just totally blown away. Like we always discuss, we always discuss on the college chat, like how much inner strength is lacking, like in the girls that we see, and like it just like the inner strength that like you're reflecting to be able to do all this like without outside validation. Just it's totally blowing me away. So that's the first thing. My question is, and if it's personal, then just disregard. But I feel like I'm missing something because, you know, if people have like external differences, and I understand that respect can go a long way and commitment go a long way, but when it's something so intrinsic, I feel like I'm not like wrapping my mind around how you could accept such a thing. So again, it could be, you know, it could be personal, it could be, it's hard to explain, but if it's something that like there's a piece that I'm missing, I feel like I'm not getting the full
Right.
picture
That
because
is-
it seems so puzzling.
It's so hard. It's so hard. And it's much harder practically with children in the house. And we don't right now have children in the house.
No,
And it does
I'm
not.
not even saying that. I'm saying more just in terms of your own inner acceptance and like an authentic acceptance, which is there. Like I can't wrap my mind around it.
Right. I hear that. So here's the thing. You get to choose how you feel about things, but you don't get to choose the things that you need to feel about. Meaning Hashem puts you in your circumstances. You don't get to choose that, but you get to choose how you feel about it. So I don't get to choose if my husband's firm or not. That's not up to me, but I do get to choose how I feel about it. So I could choose to live in pain. Oh my gosh, my husband's not firm, and every day it's really difficult and I mope around and I'm miserable and it's horrible and I have to carry that and schlep that and feel terrible about it. Or I could have the same exact husband and feel differently. And the feeling's up to me. I could have a simcha chaim. Now I have a head start. My name's Aliza. Aliza does mean simcha. So I'm happy for that. That being said, and it is a head start. That's the truth. I don't have like underlying depressive tendencies. Let me just tell you a good Jewish joke. One of my favorites. I have a few good Jewish jokes. You know the difference between a Jewish optimist and a Jewish pessimist? So the Jewish pessimist says, things can't be worse than this. And the Jewish optimist says, yes, they can. So here's the thing. So we could be like that. And we actually, I think as Jews, love to be miserable. And we feel like it's productive. I have a Rebbe here in Denver, Raviel Unger, and he's in his 80s. He told me about his parents, and they would fight a lot about worrying. His mother was a worrier, and his father was not. And they really argued about it. And his father would try to explain to his mother, when his mother said, "You're not worrying enough," right? So what does worrying do? Feeling all that agita about it. What does that do? Nothing, right? Which his father understood. He would say to her, "Look, you don't understand. I am a very fast worrier. I could worry in an hour what takes you a whole day." So, so the thing is, you get to pick how you feel about it. And if I feel that if I have chosen, which I have, to stay married to this man, now I get to pick how I feel. Should I be miserable every day because he's not frum? Or should I say, this man is not frum? He's loving, he's caring, he's honest, he's kind. He does a lot of frum things. He gives tzedakah. He still pays our shul dues, which I can't believe it. Like with whatever happened in our shul, the fact that that bill comes every year and he pays the whole thing, I don't even say, wow, good job for paying it, because I don't even want him to think that that's a good job for paying it, because I don't want him to think, you know what, Taka, why should I? But he doesn't. He pays it because he's responsible, because he knows a neighborhood needs a shul. And if everybody doesn't pay their bills, then there's not going to be the lights and the electricity, the building, the mortgage, the salary for the rabbi. Like, even if you don't go, like, a neighborhood needs a shul. And so it's not because he's frum, it's because he's a Jew and he's going to pay for that shul dues just like that. So he
Wow.
does a lot of great stuff. If the rabbi calls him, and again, there was a little falling out, but my husband's an attorney and we live in a Haredi neighborhood where there's no other attorneys or doctors because it's Haredi, right? So, but if the shul needs something, my husband's on the spot. Like, he's the lawyer for whatever it is. He'll advocate. He'll do it because he's kind and he's giving. Like that same man that I used to be Mavakar Cholim with in Sloan Kettering, he is that man. When somebody in the neighborhood, like Maus Chitim, he gives a lot. We have a few different families. He'll slip it under their door or whatever it is. Like, he's not giving it through the shul because he's not, but he's for sure giving. Yontif costs a lot of money. So he's going to help somebody else make yontif, and it's not because he's frum, it's because he's kind. So in that sense, we're in the same book, like kindness, giving, caring. It's for sure there. Is he doing it because it's a mitzvah? He's not right now. Would it be nice if he was? That would be lovely. But is he still doing it? It's still our project. When a young poor family has a baby, to buy them a crib or a stroller or something like that, like a little bigger gift. Like, we're not wealthy, but it's so nice to share and know they can have something that they need. Like, he loves to do that. So I accept him how he is. Would I like it if he also davened and had a relationship? Would I like it if he had the nechama of a relationship with Hashem? Yes, I would. And he doesn't right now. That's hard for him. But I still love
What's so
him.
beautiful? What's so beautiful about what you're saying? Can you hear me? You can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What's so beautiful about what you're saying is that you can have somebody who davens all day and who is doing all the mitzvahs, and then they don't necessarily have a good heart. Like, you can have somebody who's doing the actions, but the heart isn't there. And so it can go both ways, and both are not fun to have. So having good heart, at the end of the day, their core of themselves is in the right place.
Yeah.
And so anything could happen in the future. Anything good could come out in the future for that person.
It
So,
could.
yeah.
It could. And so I'll tell you, here's a place where I have a little bit of hope that somebody gave me. I did speak in a shul, actually, on Gimel Tammuz a few years ago. It was Shabbos. And so I gave a talk. I was asked to give a talk about the death of my grandson, the death of Rabbi Mike Stern, who was in his shloshim still, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe, was his yard site. Somehow I put together the baby, the rabbi, and the Rebbe. Anyway, I gave my talk, and somebody had recently read an article that I wrote afterwards. They came over. I forgot what I said in the talk exactly, but for some reason they asked a question: how's your husband feeling about it today? Because I wrote an article about the Emunah continuum and how he struggled with it. So it was on Shabbos in shul. I was still working for this Kiruv organization, so I wasn't going to say it out loud. Like, it's not like today. Now I don't have a boss that could fire me for having a non-frum husband, so I could be honest about it. But at that time I was more worried. Anyway, so it was on Shabbos, and they said, how's your husband feel today? I said, actually, he doesn't really believe in Hashem right now. Anyway, blah, 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 more questions, more answers. And then this couple comes over to me after the whole thing, and a man and a wife. And the man says, 40 years ago, we lost 2 boys in a fire. We had 2 little boys and a baby girl. We left the house with a babysitter. A fire broke out in the house, and the babysitter picked up the baby and ran, and our 2 boys died. And he said, with his wife standing next to him, my wife was so mad at Hashem that she did not step foot in a shul for 22 years. But when they brought the Sefer Torah from our shul in Philadelphia to this shul here in Margate, New Jersey, and they did the Hachnasa Sefer Torah, the rabbi came over to her and said, it's time to come home. And look, here she is. And I thought, how amazing is that? They came over to me to give me chizuk, to say for 22 years, he came to shul alone and she wouldn't step foot inside. But 22 years later, she did. So on the one hand, I completely accept my husband where he is now. And on the other hand, you never know. The story is not over yet. And Kol zman she'aner daluk, like as long as we are here, things can change. Hopefully they'll change in happy, healthy ways. So I have that piece of hope, but not the hope that's so strong that it ruins my everyday. Just the hope that there's a shiny future ahead and we're going to build it together. That's building that bite naman. We build it every day.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't trying to imply that it's not acceptable. I wasn't trying to imply that, like, how do you accept that's not at all. So I'm happy.
Right,
So
no
my
problem.
question is just what's your thought process? What's your thought process that allows you to transcend, which you explained? Thank you so much.
Sure.
Hi, Aliza.
You have my
Hi.
link. So funny.
I got it. I'm so blown away. You're so unbelievable. I just love you. I just have to tell you that. It's really amazing. I just, the more I get to know you, the more I love you. You're really special. All I can say is this. I'm listening to the whole story and I'm thinking, this is exactly how we would act if we had a child that was off the derech. We would love them. We hopefully, we would accept them. We'd invite them to come and be with us Shabbos in any way that they came, right? And then we just keep loving and accepting and hugging them and being warm to them. And one day, and most of these kids do come back. So if we do it for our child, why shouldn't you do the same for your spouse?
100%.
And I'm listening to you and I'm thinking you're doing exactly what any of us would do for our child, and you're doing it for your spouse because really you do love him and you do have the connection and you do enjoy him. And the love hasn't gone away. So it's the same exact thing. And if it's the same exact thing, most of these kids that have that love do come back. And Amir Hashem, as you said, he's hurt and he went through a very difficult thing, and we can't judge anybody on how they mourn because we don't know how a person mourns.
We can't. So it's close to the same thing because of that love part, but it's not the same exact because a couple generates an energy together. So it can be a little bit hard. So I'll tell you one of my internal tricks is I'm Bat, Sarah, Avraham. Right? Those are my parents. And Sarah and Avraham did it all by themselves, all alone. Right? There's nobody there supporting them. And I'm an Ivri, just like them. And I know how to do it like that. So that's a very strong piece of my identity, is that Ivri-ness. I'm also the other parts. I'm also a Yehudi and also Yisrael, also a Yeshurun, but that Ivri energy is very strong. And that is an aspect of realizing that there are times being an Ivri when you have to stand apart as Jews altogether. We stand apart from the whole world, but sometimes you have to stand alone and apart inside your community or inside your family, and sometimes even inside your marriage.
Yeah, it seems you're doing a good job and giving chizuk to all the women that need it.
Mizrat Hashem.
So I was thinking about what made you choose the name that you chose, Aliza.
Aliza. So my English name is Elisa. It was a pretty easy choice. I mean, I could have chosen Sarah, a lot of people do, Sarah or Ruth, whatever. But I don't know, I like Elisa. My mother's name is Orly. not the Hebrew name Orly, but Orally. And my grandmother's name is Elsa. So Aliza is from the Ali and the Sa of the Orally and Elsa, Aliza. I'll answer that question in a minute. Anyway, so I love the name Aliza. Although I was frustrated with it growing up, that's the truth. Nobody could pronounce it. But Aliza was a very natural choice. But I did ask later on if a ger has Ruach HaKodesh in naming themselves. And the answer is yes. Turns out it's just like parents do. There's a little bit for gerim too. So whatever, Aliza Shoshana, whatever that means, it's my name. And I have that. So what are some of the tools? Let me look at that question again so I make sure I answer it well. What are some of the practical tools? How to change from frustration to true acceptance and respect. Like, what is a script? Personal meditation, you tell yourself when you're feeling the frustration. So I will tell you a meditative space that you can use on a regular basis. And that is the bracha shahakol and borei nefashot. They're two fabulous brachot that we say on a regular basis, and they're really helpful. So first of all, when you say shahakol, pay attention. Everything happened because Hashem said it should happen. This husband, this place, this time, this mental illness, this physical illness, this bad hair day, this amount of money, this amount of whatever it is, sleep loss, whatever it is, all of it, shahakol niyeh bidvaro. So if I try to focus on that every once in a while, I'm in this space because Hashem put me right here. Right. And there's other brachot in the morning, but I really try to focus on some of those. Like a piece, that's one, and that twins with, I'll tell you another one in a minute. That twins with borei nefashot. Borei nefashot is an amazing bracha that we just zip through and don't even think about. And this, for me, I feel so gifted that I have the Hebrew to understand the words. We say, Hashem, thank you. Borei nefashot rabot. You created all kinds of different life things, life forces, nefashot, all kinds of alive things. V'chesronan, and they're missing pieces. We're all created with missing pieces. That's what we're saying. Thank you, Hashem, for creating all different kinds of alive things, and they're missing pieces. V'chesronan, right? That's what we're saying. Thank you for this life thing, this alive thing, and its missing parts. Why? Thank you for that. Like as a Wisconsin girl, even though I did not live there very long, nevertheless, cheese is a thing in Wisconsin. So Swiss cheese has holes on purpose. So I think of us as Swiss cheese by design. Hashem made us with holes on purpose. Borei nefashot rabot v'chesronan. And each one of those holes is Hashem's invitation to us. Come, na'aseh adam. I'll make you into a blob. You make yourself into a mensch. Here's your opportunity. Step forward into this hole that I made you with and fill it in. That's your opportunity. But it's not just your opportunity for yourself. I get to grow. Everybody has missing parts, and it's okay. It's part of the design. It's everybody's invitation to grow into their missing spaces. Everybody was created as Swiss cheese by design. Everyone has holes that need to be filled in, and we thank Hashem for them every day. Borei nefashot rabot v'chesronan. Thank you, Hashem, for these missing places. So I try to be thankful for them. And one more bracha that you could think about when you get really tired of all this, because it could be heavy to carry, is hanoten li'ayif koach. Because that bracha is not he who gives the tired energy. It's he who gives strength to the weary. Yayef, not ayef. Like when you've had enough of this, not ayef, I'm sleepy. Yayef, I am weary. Like this is a lot to carry all by myself. I don't know what to do with all this. Like I am schlepping, right? A lot. And that bracha, hanoten layayef koach, Hashem gives koach to that person who's exhausted and in despair from carrying so much. It's interesting to think about what are you carrying? Because right before you have Ozer Yisrael B'Gvura and Oter Yisrael B'Tifara, like carrying that crown of being majesty as a Jew, that's a heavy load. Not stam. Crowns are heavy. They weigh a lot. And you might be exhausted from carrying that. I think about that. Not that I'm recommending a TV show. Nevertheless, when I watched The Crown, there's a great line when Queen Elizabeth becomes the queen and the queen mother sits her down for a minute or stands her up for a minute and says, there will be times when Elizabeth the person feels differently than Elizabeth Regina, the royal queen. but you must always listen to the Queen Elizabeth, because she's been charged by God in her mission. And the Queen has to always trump the person, Elizabeth. And I think about that for myself. Like, I'm a princess, right? And Princess Aliza sometimes feels differently than person Aliza. But the princess always has to win, because I have a responsibility. You know, I'm carrying a crown. So I have a responsibility to be that princess. And I step up, I try to step up to the plate when I can. So so sometimes you have to say that, Hanotain li'af koach. Okay, any other questions?
I have one question actually. Does he know that you talk about him? Is he okay with that?
Yes, I
Okay.
asked his permission.
I was curious. Okay. No, I mean, you do what you have to do, but I was just curious, like in these situations, like it is someone else's, flaws that we're talking about. And I'm wondering. I
Right,
was
it's not
wondering if
even,
that
it's
was,
not even his fault. Like, yes, so he's not like, does this make him not Shomer Shabbos for Hesia? He's actually Shomer Shabbos for Hesia. Again, just because he's part of the community, like he doesn't drive on Shabbos, like he wouldn't pull out of the driveway. Everything's
Mhm.
private. Does this make it public? I don't think so, because he still behaves in private. Is this to give chizuk to people, to show the inside of a relationship with his permission? That as a couple, we set an example for people who could live together, and we joke about it sometimes. Like sometimes we say, oh my gosh, can you imagine a couple that's not on the same page? He's like, never happened. It never could. So
maybe that's the reality, is that every couple has their thing. That's what we all just need to admit, and just admit that.
Right,
Every
right.
couple has their struggle.
Every couple has their struggles, they do.
Right.
So
I
Yeah.
wouldn't call it flaws, by the way. I think it's so sad that we think of it as flaws. It's his truth with our truth, and we're living with our authentic self. I think the beauty is that Aliza accepts him with his authentic self, and she sees his truth as his truth, not as a flaw. And it would be
Right.
sad if you saw it as a flaw.
You're right. And also, as a frum Jew, we definitely have a value where it's better to be shomer mitzvos than not to be, which means that it is in a way a flaw to not be. So is it a flaw? So it's when
I
in
feel like
saying
that's
flaw,
a judgment. That's a judgment,
Right.
saying I'm better than him.
So I'm
No,
not saying I'm better, but keeping the mitzvah is better than not, in my opinion. But what I'm not judging is his life. That's up to him. That's between him and Hashem. Everybody, and Hashem's the only one who really knows the insides. Some people keep, like for me, covering my hair is not a challenge. And for some people, it really is. Whether it's how they look, whether it's how they feel. I had a friend with very curly hair, and just gave her migraines, like to cover with even she tried cutting it short, she tried leaving it long, like she just could, like it was just too bouncy, like the curls pushed back so hard, like she couldn't do it. Like, that's not my problem. My hair's nice and smooth and shiny, and everything slides off, scarves slid off, but Shita works, right? Especially with a little band that holds it. That's not a challenge. So how much schar do I get for it? I get schar, it's a mitzvah. It's not the same schar somebody else gets, where it's really like, that's between Hashem and them. That's not, I don't have to judge that. So I don't have to call it a flaw and not a flaw. Some people struggle, some people don't. And that's where you can release. I don't have to have the righteous indignation. I don't have to have the judgments. Like, I can let Hashem be in charge of the world, and I can let each person be in their own relationship with Hashem. And I can still wish for what I'd like, a husband who's a partner with me in my spiritual journey.
right.
And
Right.
okay, so I don't have that. So I have other people who are partners with me in my spiritual journey.
I think it's also so beautiful how you said that, like, you would love for him to be able to have that relationship with Hashem that could be helpful and encouraging and supportive,
Right.
And the way you said, I think so many times, like with our children also, is sometimes they'll say, you don't accept me. And it's the same type of thing. We accept you, we love you, we just wish for you. It's not about me personally wanting you to be a certain way, but I truly believe that relationship is helpful for you and beneficial for you. And that's why I wish it for you,
Right.
and that comes across very different than you need to be, or you're disappointing me.
Right. So, right. And it's hard with a child, because a child, we think they reflect on us and our parenting, which they do a little bit. So there's all kinds of struggly stuff there too. does a spouse, it's hard, you know, people judge that way. And you just have to learn. That's part where the Ivri energy comes into, you know what? You have your judgment, but I don't have to feel it. So, and of course you feel a little bit, but you don't like, that's the first midah of Hashem. I work on that Tomer Devorah concept too. Like Hashem is the same Hashem. The first midah in Tomer Devorah talks about the 13 midos harachamim. The first one is Hashem is unchanged no matter how we behave. He doesn't love us more or hate us more, no matter, he's the same Hashem before we sin, after we sin. He's not changed by how we behave. So that's the Tomer Devorah discusses that and how we could behave like that. I love you no matter what. We could be that. But underneath that, the Tarat Aliza on that is, if you understand how Hashem does that, what's the mechanism by which Hashem is unchanged or loves you no matter what? In a way, there's a sentence that Hashem Kiviyachal must say to Hashem's self, which is, who I am has nothing to do with how you behave, right? Who I am has nothing to do with how you are. And we could be that way too, and say, who I am has nothing to do with how you are. I'm not, like, it doesn't change me how you behave. I am who I am, no matter how you are, whether it's how you treat me or how you behave on the outside. Like it doesn't affect who I am. Who I am is unchanged by how you behave. So that's Hashem's first midah of rachamim, is to say I have a steadiness and an inner essence and knowing of who I am that's not dependent on how you behave around me. So I try to work on that too.
Are there any other questions?
I hope so, right? Everybody will share the recording.
Yes,
Is that
we will. We
enough?
put it on the Jewish Women Talk About Intimacy, and we'll share it on the core group.
Fantastic. Great. Okay. Thank you so
I
much.
want to really thank
Chaya.
you.
Aliza, thank you so much. You're always
Thank
so
you.
wonderful.
Thank you so much.
I look forward to continuing
And
the
lots of
conversation.
strength,
B'ezrat
lots
Hashem.
of strength and hatzlacha. And we should all greet Mashiach very,
Thank you
very soon,
so
very
much.
quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chana.
Okay.
Thank you, Aliza.
Thank you so much.